This week on The Futurists, Shelly Palmer.
If this doesn't have your undivided attention and thrill you in ways you've never been thrilled in your life, and scare the living shit out of you in ways you have never been scared, you simply don't know enough. You have more to learn.
Well, hi, and welcome back to yet another episode of The Futurists, where we talk to the people who are making and inventing and shaping and planning and envisioning the future. I'm Rob Tercek, and this is my co-host.
You forgot dreaming.
Brett King.
Hi, Brett King
dreaming
here.
the future. Now we can have computers dream for us. So,
Sure.
Brett, you're back from your travels. You're back from NASA. You're back. You're wearing your NASA shirt. Look at you.
I am NASA
Proudly.
fanboy.
Proudly. This week, we have somebody
good.
I have been so thrilled about getting on the show for such a long time. Actually, we were wanting to do this show back around CES, which is the big consumer electronics show in Las Vegas. That's one of the biggest trade shows in the world, and it's where all the companies that make consumer tech get together to show off the latest and the greatest. And sometimes they show stuff that will never see the light of day. And the very best person in the world to take you on a tour of that is Shelly Palmer. Shelly, welcome to the show. We're so thrilled to have you on The Futurists.
Oh, thanks so much.
Yay!
Great to be
It's
here.
fair turnabout too, because you've interviewed us before. So
It's true.
Right on. That's it. Log rolling on the podcasts here in progress. So Shelly, you know, what I wanted to ask you about CES, I know it was a couple months ago, but what should we be paying attention to now? Tell me, like, of all the stuff that's out there, because now we've got chips and everything's getting connected, and everything's getting smart, and we've got faster networks and more connectivity. There are a million ideas, but, you know, lots of stuff is interesting. Not everything's important. What do you think is important?
My key takeaway from CES, other than being thrilled to be back there, because, you know, in person with live human beings, and, you know, going to get a beer with some people and going to some cocktail parties and just getting a hug, you know, from the people that you've missed for 3 years. It was something magical about that. Just, I can't even believe that I am saying out loud that I was loving being in Las Vegas, because at a certain point in your life, you spent exactly one too many nights in that town.
Yeah.
But no, I hadn't. It was great to be back. If I am honest about CES, now that I've said all the good stuff, the thing that impressed me the most was what was missing from CES this year. And I sat through, I don't know how many demonstrations of people showing me augmented reality, virtual reality, mixed reality, big screens, flexible screens, screens of ways to consume or immerse yourself in media that are at the very cutting edge of what technology can give you. Telematics in the cars, fully glass cockpits, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There wasn't a person at the show who understood that unless you had near real-time control of data from the cloud, data from the local area network, the wide area network that might be around you, data coming from the local device, the sponsor's single view of the customer or CRM system, which would be in a different cloud, and you could operate on those in near real time to surface a message or content to the right person who's in the right place at the right time, then what you have is basically you have a phone that has a dial tone, but nobody to call. It was so palpable that everyone was touting this gear. It's like, look at all our gear. It's like, how do you make this actionable? Where is the infrastructure that allows the data to be turned into action so that I can give the person wearing your thing, looking at your thing, immersed in your thing, the experience without, because I live in a corporate world, having to sit with a client and go through an 18-month waterfall project plan, where by the time you get to the other end of it, the technology's changed 3 times. We're living in exponentially progressive times. And so none of the old ways that you would be able to make those tools work can. So I felt like everybody was talking about just the gear and paying no homage, in fact, no respect for what would need to happen in order for you to surface this immersive experience that everybody clearly wants. And there are as many different visions, Rob, as you can imagine. Like everyone's got from video gaming on one side, how will you make a game immersive? How will you make going to a restaurant immersive? How will you go, what's in retail? What's happening in a medical environment? Can you use it for training? Like everyone's got brilliant ideas about how to do it, but nobody had any infrastructure. And it was so palpably missing. Hey, so how do what does the front end look like? What front end? Well, what do the APIs look like?
Yeah, or what's the cloud configuration of the connectivity?
Crickets.
I mean,
you can
see.
Oh, sorry.
You can see Apple is struggling with their new developer headset that should be released any day theoretically. But it's, as you say, it's not just even your UX architecture, next gen app store, things like that. It's just the computing, the edge computing platform that you need to run this. And we're making fair progress on the cloud generally, in the States. But if you look, this is where players like Huawei in China with their edge computing play, I think, are really stepping ahead on this stuff. Particularly with their smart city implementation stuff in Shenzhen and things like that.
Absolutely right. And look, Qualcomm's got a bunch of edge stuff. NVIDIA is getting a lot of love right now because of their GPUs. Yeah. But look, the story of the edge and then local devices is probably not getting the kind of attention it should get, and it certainly was boldly absent from the things that I saw.
But what's funny about that is just a month and a half later, in Barcelona, is another one of the world's biggest trade shows, which is the Mobile World Congress.
Yeah,
and this is where all the all the people who dress in their colorful gray suits from the telephone companies, they all gather together in one of the most exciting cities in the world to one of the most boring events, which is the infrastructure show. Right? It's the mobile network show, and so this is about all the connectivity that's missing at CES. And man, it is deflationary to go from one where you get the euphoria of all the gear at CES and Vegas and all that. And then you go to Barcelona and it's like these incredibly boring people talking about infrastructure. Both pieces are necessary, but they're kind of like the yin and yang of each other. And where you get this thrill of consumer facing at CES, you get you get the dead hand of these enormous monopolies or duopolies when you go to the World Congress. You just see how bureaucratic and how stifling the big telcos really are. They're making progress, like Brett said, but it's like glaciers. They're kind of grinding. Towards it.
Rob, cool stuff happens at Mobile World Congress. John Hoffman's that's such a good idea. One of the things they have at Mobile World that they don't have at CES is they have like the secret entrances for dignitaries. Princes and kings of municipalities show up with their entourages, and it's like the Sultan of this and the King of that, and it's like, I don't know, we don't have much of that at CES. Yeah. So that's kind of cool. The other thing is, it's not so much infrastructure versus a kit that a consumer would hold on to, phones or screens or whatever. Really, it's the entire set of behind the scenes tools required to manipulate data. And even at the infrastructure shows, everybody assumes it's somebody else's gig. Oh, that's plumbing. It'll be taken care of. It's not plumbing. Data sovereignty for the consumer is the European Union's biggest thing. It's totally different in the States where we have, I don't know, catch as catch can, whatever. You got New York Shield Law, you got CCPA, you got like Jersey has something, tennis, like everybody's got their own like privacy laws. So you don't exactly know how to put together a comprehensive data structure in the States. And then in China, all bets are off because you don't know what's going on. Is it the government that has everything? Is it quote private companies, if there is such a thing? Like, so we're living in three worlds, right? You're living in the China data world, which is, and they've got some pretty big arms and legs. They reach all over. They've got Chinese infrastructure and ports of shipping ports all over the planet. You got the United States, which, to be fair, is just if you watched some of our well, let's just say if you watch some of our elected leaders go after TikTok, the story about
I knew that was coming.
does TikTok access your home Wi-Fi network?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. That's like when Orrin Hatch said to Mark Zuckerberg, well, if you don't charge money, how does Facebook make money? And Senator, we run ads. I mean, like it doesn't instill confidence in your.
No, China's spent $8 trillion on the Belt and Road. They're 10 years in on the CBDC.
Yeah.
In terms of AI level infrastructure, we've had this debate on this show many times. But it's pretty interesting to see what's coming out of China.
So at the end of the day, we are in a world where there are 3 different sets of data rules.
Yeah.
GDPR, which is pretty good. I mean, they seem to understand that you should take a 3-hour lunch. And I like any culture that says you should take a 3-hour lunch and, you should work to live, not live to work. I kind of like that vibe. Then in America, it's just work 24 hours a day till you fall down at your desk dead. Okay, I get that. So we got some data rules around that. And then China, which is whatever it is that week. And I'm not sure that I have a full handle on the understanding of how the Chinese government might be using data to do whatever they're doing. But what I do know, guys, is that if I was tasked right now with creating an immersive experience for us, walk into a retail store, walk down a venue like in New Orleans on Bourbon Street, go to a sporting event and have something surface that makes me feel like a VIP and gives me some graphical experience or some immersive experience with audio and video, I'd be hard pressed to easily put that together. It can be done, but it would all be one-off. And if you remember the old days, hey, let's do a homepage takeover. That was 18 months of waterfall style meetings with I don't know how many people in corporate, how many people at the ad agency, how many people at the medium buying agency, how many people at the creative agency. Then the client had to sign off. Then you had to make sure that the company you were working with, will Yahoo let us do that to the front page of Yahoo? I mean, it's like, you remember those days? Like that.
Yeah. But in a way, what you're doing is you're explaining the point. I guess you're giving a response to what Brett had just raised about Apple. Apple's been, I guess, hinting, threatening, maybe suggesting that it's going to drop some kind of awesome augmented reality, maybe virtual reality headset. The rumors keep changing, so you don't really know. It's a little bit like China in that way. But we've been hearing about this for 3 years. Yes. And the question has been, where is the new Apple headset? And Brett, I think everything we just heard from Shelly explains why Apple's not in the habit of selling products that don't work. And Apple's not in the habit of creating bad experiences for people. So if they look at the network and they look at the cloud and they look at all the infrastructure and they go, not yet, because we haven't really deployed 5G in the United States. You don't have millimeter.
But they do need developers working on applications and content
happening
for the
already in the works. But we know this from the rumor mill in California, right? Yeah. So there's tons of people working on Apple stuff. And by all accounts, it's amazing. But I think they're not going to unleash it on the public until they know that people can hook it up to a proper 5G network and get a decent experience. Otherwise it's going to be an Oculus. Like people buy those the Meta headsets, and on average they're used twice a month. It's a very expensive paperweight.
By the way, guys, what I did learn at CES, I always wondered what Darth Vader's bandolier had in it and what the Stormtroopers' bandoliers had in them.
Yeah.
And I always thought it was ammunition for the blasters, and now I am completely convinced they were batteries.
It's batteries for the head-up display.
Batteries for the heads-up display.
Right on. Okay, so Shelly, we talked about January. That was CES. We talked about February. That was the Mobile World Congress. And then we get to a fairly momentous March 2023, the month that started with the release of GPT-4, and then just a few days later, Facebook dropped Llama. Their large language model slipped out somehow. And then we have just a cascade of crazy events. Like 1,000 AI apps were launched in March. And then at the end of the month, we had this famous letter where, a bunch of dignitaries, self-appointed dignitaries said to us, wait, we got to put the brakes on. This is moving too fast.
Did you sign the letter?
I did.
Okay. Well, so my issue with the letter, like talking with Gary Marcus and people like this, is that a 6-month pause without us saying, all right, what is the objective of, this pause in terms of let's get some guardrails for the safe deployment of AI. That's my issue, is that a pause is just 6 months, we're back with the same problem.
I didn't sign it because I thought there would be even a 10-second pause, Brett. That's not why I signed it. I signed that letter because we've been doing AI at the Palmer Group since 2000, when it was statistical machine learning. When the first time we automated a way to find R squared, the first time we actually could figure out how to automate a fast Fourier transform, the first time we could figure out how to regress a line of any kind and get something valuable and get a CI that was high enough and go, wow, okay, can we make it learn that this is the right outcome? And early reinforcement learning and early neural networks. This is not new to us. It's been around a long time. Most consumers think that November 30th, 2022 was the beginning of AI. It's nonsense. It's been around for a long time. If this doesn't have your undivided attention and thrill you in ways you've never been thrilled in your life, and scare the living shit out of you in ways you have never been scared, you simply don't know enough.
Understand, yeah. Exactly.
You simply don't know enough. You have more to learn.
It changes everything. It changes everything.
Everything. And when I saw the letter, I thought, this is nonsense. But you know what? And it's real nonsense. It's not, no one's stopping anything for literally a nanosecond. That's not what's going to happen.
But we have to have the conversation about how this is going to impact
that's right.
the world.
Smart people just sit in a room and say, you know, when this thing gets HTTP requests, the capability to make an HTTP request, you don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
For those of you listening who don't understand what that would mean, it would mean that a model would have the autonomous ability, when it thought it needed to go out to the internet and do something on your behalf based on what it believes it calculated its next best action to be. It doesn't think. It doesn't have context. It has no clue what it's doing, but it has your credit card and a way to get to the web. I'm sorry. Someone needs to sit down and just talk that through for a second. Whether or not you can stop it, use your metaphor. Can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. Can't put the genie back in the bottle. You're not stopping progress. And I'm the last human being that would ever advocate for that. Plus the fact there's no such thing as good technology or bad technology. That distinction is reserved for human beings. There are good people and bad people. The tech is the tech. But folks, do you not understand what we're about to unleash?
I agree with that.
Yuval Harari, who wrote the book *Sapiens*, has a line in one of his books, and it might be this third book. He called it consciousness decoupled, intelligence decoupled from consciousness. And it's not exactly precisely metaphorically correct, but it is.
But it's close,
stunningly close.
Yeah.
Intelligence. Look, is your calculator intelligent? I don't know if I can do the square root of 368,244 right now without a calculator. I probably, it would take me a few minutes to do it longhand. But I wouldn't. I would grab my calculator. Is my calculator smarter than I am when it comes to pulling square roots of numbers that have more than a couple of digits? Yes, it's way smarter than I am.
Okay, but Shelly, let me offer this. Part of what you talked about, intelligence being decoupled from consciousness, and that's certainly interesting. We'll never know when these machines are actually conscious or not.
Never.
But on the other hand, there's another factor here, because there is this sort of palpable feeling of resistance. And in some cases, I think people are fed up with the tech industry. And that's a matter of intelligence decoupled from morality. So the people who are driving this bus, the people who are telling these AIs what to do, the people who just went ahead and launched this, they didn't ask for any permission. Nobody asked for it. Nobody said, oh, gee, I'd like to have a smart typewriter that can complete my sentences for me. That just got dropped on us all. The people who are running this have not demonstrated any deep grounding in morality or any sense that they understand philosophy or civics.
Even Google and Microsoft have both fired their ethical boards recently, what's that about, right?
Did you see the video of Satya Nadella where he says, we are going to teach Google to dance. We're going to make the world know that we made Google dance. He seemed almost like a James Bond villain. It was the strangest thing to see. I mean, he's a brilliant CEO, no question. Right now, his company is rocking it, right? But that was a really weird victory lap to take.
So, yes. And look, there's a problem that I think some people who have been following this for more than 5 minutes have probably heard the term. It's called alignment, or the alignment problem. I'm sure
talk about that.
You guys are familiar with the term, I'm sure. For those of you who don't know what the term is, the problem with AI is that it is unclear how you create a model where the outputs are going to be truly aligned with human interest, like your interests as the creator. And there's a whole bunch of reasons for this. I think, and I don't know if you guys have covered this in previous podcasts, but it would be instructive for everyone listening to understand how this works. Just for a second, the generative pre-trained transformer has been around for a while. Google initiated this research years back in their Google Translate group. Why did the Translate group do this? Well, it's really simple. 50% of the internet is written in English. 20% of people on Earth speak English. Google is one of the few companies on this planet that will get bigger as internet usage increases. So imagine this: Google becomes accessible to 30% more people than they can get to right now because it's in a language they understand. Google profits, and they profit mightily. They would need to do nothing else to grow, but simply translate that part of the internet which people do not understand. And so they put Google Translate front and center. And it was a modern marvel. And they started doing it with first with statistical machine learning back 5-10 years ago. And then they realized that neural networks could be used to accomplish some of this. And ultimately, BERT and some of the other transformer tools evolve at Google. And Google are your guys. They're having a Kodak moment right now. The Kodak, if you remember, invented digital photography, but they were also the biggest sellers of paper and film in the world. And that was a multi-billion-dollar business. And they had some business issues, and they just crushed their digital camera business until they went out of business because no one cared anymore. So Google knows a lot about pre-trained transformers. Let me tell you who are listening a little bit about how they work. The simplest, and it's not a fully accurate metaphor, but it's going to do for this. If I say Rob is always looking for trouble, and then I say trouble's always looking for Rob, those sentences have exactly the same words in them, exactly the same, but they do not mean the same thing in any way. Rob is always looking for trouble, and trouble's always looking for Rob would be interpreted by any native English speaker as two completely different thoughts. Now, AI has no way of understanding prior to transformers what the word order meant. And everyone who thinks Facebook is reading your stuff or Google's reading your stuff, you clearly don't understand how they work. There are no tools in our science that can read and understand the English language in any way, not even ChatGPT. It doesn't. Here's what it does. It has read, it's called the large language model for a reason. It has read a ton of data. The corpus is the entire internet that they can get their hands on, in GPT's case, up to 2021. And it has looked through a concept called self-attention at the order of words, the word it's on, looking back at the previous 3, 4, some odd words. And it is statistically scoring, for lack of a better way to describe it, what words are supposed to follow what words. What are the, after reading a trillion words, what's the most likely next word? So it looks at
it's just statistics, basically.
It looks at your query. It has no idea what you've asked. It has no idea what the words mean in any way, but it knows that the is the most popular word in the English language, and what precedes the is not going to help it. And it just keeps working its way backwards till it gets a decent idea about what it thinks the words it should write have to do with the words you have written. It is a word calculator. It basically is no smarter than a cash register. It's just a word calculator. So how do you align its ability to learn statistically what goes where with your desired outcome if, for example, there is a ton of writing about the Bible, and the Bible tells a story about whatever it tells a story about, however you interpret it. There are an ungodly number of translations of the Bible available. There are different flavors of the Bible available. They all tell basically the same story. You go ask ChatGPT a question about the Bible. Will that answer be aligned with the answer the creator of that model intended? There's no way to solve for that right now. And so that's not an ethical
explanation of alignment. That was a very long discourse on alignment, but I love the way you brought it full circle. Shelly, tell us what you do for a living, because just before we started this, you were chatting with me about how you've got incoming queries. A lot of people want to know what to do next. What is this? What does the Palmer Group do?
So technically, we're a tech strategy and solutions firm, and in the old days, before last week, we would be known as a company that was specializing in digital transformation for big tech, big brands, and big media. So, if you look at the logo wall, it's Fortune 500 companies, and we help people take legacy systems and legacy ideas and figure out better, more efficient ways to do them and ways to interface with the modern world. We have a concentration in technology, media, and marketing. I come out of the TV business, and so in my early life, I spent almost my full time writing music for television and directing television commercials and TV shows. So we have in fact, at one point I was president of the Emmys in New York. So I have a pretty deep background in television and radio. And so we also put the very first ever tapeless recording studio online in 1986, the first fully digital recording environments. We did that because we needed to invent it for productivity.
Yeah.
But so my tech background comes out of holding a soldering iron and actually doing stuff.
Yeah. A lot of people don't realize this, but the digital media revolution started with the music industry, and particularly in post-production. And in New York, I was there in the 1980s. And the first non-linear editing happened. It wasn't video first. That took almost 10 years.
No, it was at 19 West 36th Street at Creative Audio, which was our studio. That's where it started.
Right. Okay.
April 1980.
So Shelly, what we like to do on the show is we like to do a quick fire round right before we take a break. And a quick fire round is a series of quick questions so that our audience can get a little more acquainted with you and how you're shaped. And for this process, Brett is the one who administers the questions. I'm going to turn it over to Brett for the rapid fire round.
Here we go. So what was the first science fiction you remember being exposed to?
Ray Bradbury.
Very cool. What technology do you think has most changed humanity?
The thermos.
The thermos. That's interesting.
Sure. when you put hot liquid in it stays hot. When you put cold liquid in it stays cold. How does it know?
That's pretty cool.
I'm kidding with you. The number one technology that's changed everything, honestly, is the computer. But first it was a steam engine, and then it was the computer, right? So after fire and the 10,000 years of humans that figured that out, writing was pretty good 5,000 years ago. Steam shovel allowed us to build the world we see around us. And now computers are where steam shovels amplified the quality of our muscles and the abilities of our muscles thousands of times. Computational power like AI is amplifying the power of our minds tens of thousands of times. These are sea changes in humanity.
Yeah, human augmentation. Sure. You can even talk about the spectacles, right?
Yeah.
Name a futurist or an entrepreneur that has influenced you.
Ray Kurzweil.
He's good.
Law of Accelerating Returns. I think right around 2000, he wrote, but maybe 1999, he wrote a book where he talked about the law of accelerating returns, and it was my lived experience. And I thought, wow, okay, somebody's really thinking about the world the way I'm thinking about the world. Moore's Law was interesting. Marty Cooper, God bless, he just had a 50th anniversary of the first cell phone call. Cooper's Law, that the capacity of telecommunications networks increases every 30 months, is actually more accurate than Moore's Law. So kudos to Marty Cooper. And I don't know if those are futurists or just people who are in it with their finger on the pulse. And
that's how we think of the term, though. It's the people who are building the future, not just the people who are talking about it.
Yeah, the talkers are less interesting than the guys that are doing it.
Right on. Cool.
Absolutely. And what science fiction story is most representative of the future you hope for?
If I am honest with you, Star Trek, the original series, Gene Roddenberry's vision of a future where human pursuits of things that we intrinsically believe are human. And by the way, my thinking has evolved on what it means to be human from my naive childhood days of Gene Roddenberry's world. But seeing the super diverse bridge of the Enterprise and having them go out there and try to take the very best of what we believed the golden rule looked like, and the prime directive, which is non-interference, and the moral dilemmas that were posed. It was a show that if you let it it would cause you to think a little bit of not so much about science fiction in the future, but what it means to be human in the future. And I was really, really taken by that. I saw Star Trek as inspiration for my career, not science fiction. And a quick aside, I know we're going to take a break. Years ago, 2006, I did a lecture at the Media Lab at MIT. And it was the year the Motorola StarTAC had out, and the
communicator, right?
Wireless Bluetooth. And I put a picture up of the Star Trek communicator and the StarTAC, 1966, 2006. I put Uhura's earpiece and the Bluetooth single earpiece that they had at Motorola, and that was her earpiece. And I then the next thing I did was I put up a picture of the bridge of the Star Trek Enterprise from the original series. And I'm in a room filled with people at the Media Lab. And the room we were in was that, that whiteboard material that
right.
Whiteboard. Well, all the walls were whiteboard. And I asked the question, I said, what do we think? What do we think was the wireless bandwidth required for everyone with a tappable communicator to communicate? Like what kind of bandwidth, what kind of computational power are we looking at on the Starship Enterprise? And I expected it was rhetorical. I didn't actually ask the question. I asked it in a rhetorical way as I put the slide up, because the slide I was about to talk about the advent of 4G in 2006, right? LTE is coming, and the whole conversation was about what that would do to consumer empowerment and how people's behaviors were likely to change. Every person in the room, this is Scout's honor, got up, went to the wall, and started. My speech was over. They were all calculating what they thought the bandwidth and the throughput and the computational capacity of the main computer on the Starship Enterprise would be. And that reaffirmed what I believed as a child when I watched Star Trek. And I only really saw it in reruns. I was too young to watch it when it was on in prime time. This was not science fiction. This was a blueprint. This is a blueprint for things you might be able to do.
And I think that's generally, why we ask these questions, coming up to the break is, we have had science fiction authors on the show and so forth, is they're a great lens into the future. The one possibility, though, is that often sci-fi is also a commentary on current social conditions. But let's take a quick break. We're with Shelly Palmer, technologist, futurist extraordinaire. We will be right back after this break. Provoke Media is proud to sponsor, produce, and support the Futurist podcast. Provoke.fm is a global podcast network and content creation company with the world's leading fintech podcast and radio show, Breaking Banks. And of course, its spin-off podcast, Breaking Banks Europe, Breaking Banks Asia Pacific, and the FinTech 5. But we also produce the official Finovate podcast, Tech on Reg, Emerge Everywhere, the podcast of the Financial Health Network, and Next Gen Banker. For information about all our podcasts, go to provoke.fm or check out Breaking Banks, the world's #1 fintech podcast and radio show. We're back with the Futurists. Our esteemed guest this week is Shelly Palmer. You probably heard of Shelly. He's been a mainstream figure at CES, on the TV, and of course in media generally. Shelly, before the break, we did start getting into the AI progression and so forth, the fear factor. You've had a lot of people coming out asking for this pause in this letter that we talked about earlier, but in real terms, what do you fear about AI versus what are you excited about?
Look, bad actors, again, those are people. Those are not technologies. The problem is that nobody, I don't care who you ask, nobody understands where this is going to go. We don't understand how to align these tools in a narrow, focused way with our desired outcomes. There's a wonderful little box called the useless machine. It has one switch. And when you press the switch, a little arm comes out from the machine and turns the machine off. So the machine is programmed to do one thing, turn itself off. And when you turn it on, it says, well, thank you for that, but I want to be off. you can't control a single algorithm. Like, you can't make that machine go on because it's been programmed to turn itself off. That's one instruction. One. So you want to tell me, is there a human being arrogant enough to think that I can't write paradoxical instructions by accident that would just cause all kinds of nonsense to happen? So what I fear is what I don't know, and I think we all fear what we don't know. It's my fears about AI are very different from the consumer fears I hear from my clients or people at dinner parties. They're all, with the Hollywood Terminator stuff or Whopper from War Games.
It's going to kill us all. Like, I'm so tired of hearing that.
It's like, oh God, that's nonsense. But again, as I said earlier, once you give it HTTP request capability, that's going to be a little tough. Yeah. There's an interesting concept, AGI, artificial general intelligence.
Yeah, we're hearing a lot about it now. It's going to just arise magically out of a large language model.
Yeah, maybe. I
don't think so.
I mean, we've had Ben Goertzel and Roman Yablonsky on the show and so forth, and they are well away from in terms of large language models being spontaneously able to generate AGI, because there's if you talk about AGI being able to teach an AI anything that you can teach a human, then we're not talking about just language. Right? You could have a convincing language model that convinces you it's a human and can talk to you like a human. It doesn't mean it can drive a self-driving car.
And it might not even be thinking. It's just generating what it thinks you're going to like. So for the folks who are listening, AGI is artificial general intelligence, which is a bit of a mythological construct since we can't define intelligence to begin with.
Right.
And in many cases, humans can't agree on what our definition of intelligence. We keep coming up with new definitions of intelligence, emotional intelligence, creative intelligence, and so forth. And so this is a little bit of a nebulous term. Nevertheless, in the artificial intelligence industry, it is a goal. It is a goal to create an autonomous thinking machine that has some level of sentience. The folks at OpenAI have made it very clear. The founders of Google made it very clear that this is a long-term goal of theirs. So there's been some speculation.
But AGI has been the goal of humanity, right? Like if you look back to the steam machine man of the prairies.
Speak for yourself, man. I don't know if that's my goal. Like, that might be your goal.
No, but I think if we talk about automation, this is why when people debate whether AI is going to take jobs from humans, I say, what are you talking about? This has been the sole entire intent of manufacturing artificial intelligence, to make our life easier by removing labor from using machines. This has always been the intent.
Okay, is that happening, Shelly? In your view, is life getting easier or harder with these things?
Let's give ourselves a definition for a second, just so we can have the conversation. So AI, as we understand it right now, is designed to perform specific tasks. It will make you an image mid-journey. It will do some text-to-text, which is what ChatGPT does. It'll do natural language processing. Some do speech recognition. You talk to a device and it understands the words. It may not know what you meant, but at least it can take the words you say, the audio, and turn it into text. AGI, artificial general intelligence, would be, for this conversation only, a tool set or a model that could learn anything that we could learn at a level we could learn it. Now, we don't know what that speed is, but let's leave it there. My personal belief, this is one man talking, is we don't need to get anywhere near AGI for this to become a horrifically strange world. Here's how it would work.
That's very true. Yeah.
Here's how it would work. I've got a bunch of narrow focus tools. I've got speech recognition. I've got, in both directions, I have speech to text and text to speech. I've got graphics to text and text to graphics. Midjourney 6, they're saying you'll put a picture in, it's going to give you the prompt. It's like just so there's imagine all the narrow focus tools in the world. If you go over to Hugging Face, you can see all the narrow focus tools they have. Now, all you need is a semi-generalized AI model whose job it is to wrangle the narrow focus models And you've got near AGI. It's not AGI. It's not close to AGI, but it will be able to do things in an autonomous way that will mimic, and maybe not in a good way, what AGI is supposed to be able to do. And so to me, it's like everybody's saying, well, maybe large language models are not the path to artificial general intelligence for all kinds of reasons. It doesn't really matter.
It doesn't matter. I mean, AI is going to be impacting employment patterns. It's going to impact our behavior. It's going to be doing all of those things well before we get to AGI.
And here's the thing. People are afraid of losing their jobs. Let me tell everybody listening how to not be afraid of losing your job, because it's really simple. There's actually nothing simpler in the world you can do than not lose your job to AI. You become, in the office, the very best human AI coworker team. You
man plus machine
thing you are good at, and you use AI to do what it does best. Quick example. You're an art director. You have a really good idea. You're being tasked with a page of deliverables that include every IAB standard unit. You got to do a double truck for the 3 print magazines left in the world. You have to do a 30-sheet billboard because they're going to buy some billboards with paper billboards. You have to do a digital version of that, the high enough resolution where it'll sit on a digital billboard. You need to do some graphics or digital signage in store because those are completely different formats too. Today, you'd have junior art directors running all over the department, and you'd hand this off to them and they'd do it. With a tool set like we're talking about, you'd press a button and all of the versions would show up in seconds. You would then teach it.
Yeah, that's an advantage. But let me interrupt, because I want to really get this is where people start to lose it, right? Because that all sounds great. You're right. We can automate stuff. And you're right. Somebody in an office can raise their hand and say, I'm going to be the AI expert for my company. I'm going to be the best at AI bookkeeping. And I'm going to be the
chat prompt whisperer. Yeah.
Yes. I'll be super augmented because I'll know how to do prompt craft better than anyone else. Okay. There's 2 thoughts with that. First off, not everybody wants to change their working methodology. People have a workflow they're quite content with. And I think this is part of the panic that you're seeing right now. People are going, I didn't ask for this. I didn't actually want to be augmented with this technology. Now I have to get on a treadmill. And
but
remember,
this is the story of technology
is by a technology company. It's foisting it on you. Right? We didn't invite this in.
So, Rob, I call total too bad. Welcome to evolution. I'm sorry. This is my lived experience. I started my career as a composer, producer, writing music for television. Mom and dad met at Juilliard. They owned music stores. I grew up in a very musical household, and I started writing music for a living. I had to learn. How did I learn? By mimicking my music teachers, and my parents were my first music educators. And I learned, and my father would say, play it like this. And he didn't mean kind of like this. He meant like this.
Okay, but that brings me to my second point. Look, the benevolent mentorship is going to get lost. As soon as we automate this, and there's no junior art directors who are running around doing all the artwork, or there's no dad who's teaching you how to do the music.
Farm Club's going to get a little thin. But here's my point. My point is that at a certain time in my life, I had spent was it Malcolm Gladwell, 20,000 hours of time you had to be good at something? Well, I spent 40,000 hours, Malcolm. I'm sorry. I don't know who could spend 20,000, but I played a lot of instruments because we owned a music store and there were a lot of instruments, and I picked every one of them up I could pick up, and I woodshed on it. And guess what? The equivalent of me, born now, gets to press a button and get something to happen. And somebody, my 6-month-old the youngest of my 4 granddaughters, when she turns, call it 7 years old, if she can describe it, it will happen for her. The democratization of creativity that this brings, and I will fight anyone to the death on this subject. I was literally taught, this is how John Coltrane plays Giant Steps. This is how David Sanborn plays churchy blues music. This is how Michael Brecker has conceived creative chromatic harmony in a way that is still in my head from when I was 14 years old, may he rest in peace. And whenever I think of approaching a chord progression in chromatic harmony, every rule of being Michael Brecker is running through my head unconsciously because he's been in every saxophone player's head since he started playing. All that's
this is what Star Wars would look like if Spielberg produced it. Right?
So at the end of the day, now, this young child will be able to, who loves music, who has something to say, who wants to emote something, who's got real ideas about the kind of float or the kind of rhythms or the kind of dance music or the melodic thing that he or she wants, and they just describe it, and out it comes. That democratization trumps 100% of the now, 100,000 hours I have into playing. Rob, I have a practice plan that I do every morning. People probably don't think that, wow, man, you're 65 years old. Do you practice every day? For an hour and a half. You know how, and there's a diary that goes back 61 years. I was 4 years old when my dad started writing my practice plan. And then I, of course, took it over. What am I working on this week? You're going to laugh. I'm working on guide tones for this bizarre, eclectic, multi-tonal, crazy, insane piece of jazz music.
Wow.
And my goal is to be able to do that in 12 keys without thinking about it. And it follows no progression a human being would ever do. And I'm like, wow, this is tough. I'm going to do this week. This is really a pain in the butt. It's not diatonic. It's not chromatic. It's some weird ass microtone. Okay, good. I'm going to do this week.
Okay,
so for me.
You're saying that you're committed to lifelong learning, and I get it. Like, you're giving us very ample evidence of that, which I fully respect. And you know me, I share that.
That's part of the process, Rob.
A lot of people don't. A lot of people are very content to go to work and do their job, come home, watch Netflix, make some food. They don't want to be jostled out of their very comfortable niche that they've got. What I think both of you guys are saying is like, tough luck. It's here.
Well, you've got Luddites and you've got people who adapt.
Yeah, I know. But let's not replay the Luddite story, because we hear that all the time. That's not what this is. This is.
Can I make a point though, Rob?
Well, hang on. Let me just carry the thought through. Only because it's sort of like this. The lament that we're hearing, and it's in every newspaper, every magazine you look at right now. The lament that we are hearing is not the lament of like the worker in the factory or the day laborer or the person who does the mundane task or even the bookkeeper or the back office person. It is the lament of the high priests, the attorneys, the coders, the graphic designer. These are the people who learned a particular language or particular skill of expression. And now they're finding out that skill just got commoditized, not over years, in a month. It's like, wow, you were great at what you did back in 2022. And here it is 2023. And guess what? The world no longer sees value in writing a long-winded legal brief. The world no longer sees value in coding a web page. Suddenly that's something that a kid can do just by talking to a machine or even holding up a picture to GPT-4 and saying, make this website. So that is the lament. It's that, wow, stuff that I spent my entire career learning and becoming expert in. Let's say I'm an attorney or a coder or a copywriter for an ad agency. Overnight, that's been rendered invaluable, devalued completely. Okay, deal with that one. Respond. Go. Tear it apart.
So this one's easy. This one is really easy. The number one driver of economic success is productivity. End of story. There are many definitions of success, but if we are to define economic success, then the number one, the key driver of economic success is productivity. You may not have liked email. You might not like PowerPoint. You may not like Excel. There's a lot of things you don't like, but you use them every day. The Microsoft Office is required for knowledge workers. In
fact, we called them productivity tools.
Do we have someone in the office who makes your PowerPoints for you? You've been very lucky that you could have a wage slave who would do that. Now the wage slave gets replaced by automation, the way the cotton gin helped you process cotton. So automation's not new. We are always looking for greater productivity. Every production job, no matter what it is, if you are to produce something, a set of financials, a point of view on an ad buy, a piece of music, a piece of video, no matter what you are producing, a loaf of bread, you are governed not by what the market will pay for it, but what it costs you to make. Because those who are more productive and have wider margins make more money. Market sets the price. End of story every day. If you're super famous, you can be aggressive in your less aggressive in your pricing. But if you're a journeyman, which most people are, and we're talking about most people, the price is set by market. You can't charge twice what your competitor charges and be a middle managed mafia member at a big corporation. Now you are going to have to learn some new tools. And if you resist learning those tools, you may be content. And I'm sorry that your world is turned upside down. I've lived this several times.
Yeah, this is history.
And by the way, it's happening in an exponential pace, which is going to piss you off.
I think that's the difference, isn't it? The difference is the speed now, because even when the internet came along, people were like, yeah, it's not going to really affect me for the next 5 years.
I don't need a website.
Yeah, I don't need a website. Why do I need
those phones are for
I'm
kids.
never going to be on Facebook. Yeah, exactly. Right. And here we are, but now, as Rob pointed out, this is happening in months and people don't have the time to get comfortable with it and adapt. And as you say, the market doesn't care. The market does not care. If we can get some productivity gains by removing some humans out of the workforce, the market will celebrate it. Investors will flock to it. That's the core problem we have right now. If we want to have a controlled evolution of artificial intelligence, you have to turn the market forces off, and that's not going to happen.
I mean, Rob, just not to put the fine point on this. When I got in the music business, table stakes. You had to be able to sight sing anything put in front of you. They put a piece of music paper on the stand, and you're with 4 or 5 people you may or may not know. And there were 4 clicks to start, and you started singing. And you had 1 take for the engineer to get the levels, and the next take was the take, and then you were done. It paid extremely well. That was table stakes. Same thing with every musician walked into the room. If you were called in to play keyboard for something, I was called in to play whatever I was called in to play. It was expected. Table stakes. That I would sit down and read it off the paper as if I had been practicing it my whole life. Now, I ran a music production company for a very long time, and sometime in the late 90s, we got a soloist in, who's I will not name, very famous soloist. Client spent a lot of money, $150,000 to bring this pop star in, and they wanted to use their background singers. And I wrote the chart out, and they're like, "Can we just get the lyrics, please, and just sing it to us?" Why? Well, none of us read music. To be in the room when I was their age required a music education that no one needs even think
Paul
about.
McCartney didn't read music when he started with the Beatles.
But he only played his own stuff.
True. Yeah.
We were in the business of playing other people's stuff.
Yeah, you were saying that was table stakes just a few years earlier, and suddenly it became obsolete overnight.
And it didn't matter. It's like, just communicate to these singers by singing to them.
And now you'll just type it in as a prompt, and soon it'll be something that you just say to your phone and generate the music.
I lived this, and it was no fun saying, wow, I got thousands of hours of performance skill training here in order to be able to just be in this room. And these guys are waltzing in here because of their unique talents and able to just, they get a pass. So folks, you don't get a pass on this one. Everybody needs to learn. You don't want to learn, your choice. Consequences will be dire.
Yeah.
Okay, but you can understand why people would not like that, right? Some people would say,
I totally understand.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter.
Okay, let's talk about it.
Doesn't matter if you like it.
I'm empathetic. I'm empathetic.
Well, it does.
It doesn't change
Brett,
anything.
it does, because
but
that's where the letter comes from. That's where
but
pressure on Congress comes from. People, there's a backlash happening here.
Right.
And, I grew up in the Midwest.
This requires bigger thinking, and it really comes back to the nature of capitalism.
Okay, but when you say that, just hear what you're saying. This requires bigger thinking. Who are you talking to? When I grew up in the Midwest in the 1980s, the auto factories and the tire factories and all the suppliers to the auto industry were going out of business. Those jobs were going overseas. We were offshoring. And it was quite easy for me as a young kid to look at that and say, like, well, that's a lousy career. I'm not going to go in there. All my friends were going to go work in an auto factory, go work for Ford Motor or Fisher Body or something like that. I chose not to do that, right? I chose to upskill, as Kelly has shared with us, right? It was very easy for me to say that at the time. It's a little tougher, though, if you're a person who has been working on that factory line for 25 years to just say,
or a truck driver who's been driving cross country for 20 years.
Yeah,
exactly.
And now who it's happening to is the journalists. It's happening to the attorneys,
lawyers,
it's happening
doctors,
to the people.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. These people with really high skills who invested quite a lot of money in education. And for many years, they've had a lot of prestige and power in their industry because they have those skills. And I guess the point I'm making is, this is happening for them. The experience they're having is it's happening overnight. It really feels like it just started happening in the last couple of months. So let's go back to the point that Shelly made before the break, which was about the law of accelerating returns. Because at the end of the show, we like to look out in the future. And I think right now we can say, all of us think about the 3 of us spend all our time thinking about the future. But things are changing so fast and compounding so quickly. And this space is so complex, and there's so many new emergent effects coming that we can't anticipate. Shelly, I have a question for you. Can you give us a vision of where this is going? Can you put on your forecasting lens now and give us a picture of what we should expect 5, 10, 15 years?
As you've said, you've been watching technological development your entire career. So extrapolate it for us.
I have two minds. One, we just all figure it out, and the earth keeps turning. The sun comes up in the morning, goes down in the evening, and we figure it out, and things will be heterogeneously different over time. That's my hope. If I could hope, it'll infiltrate maybe a little faster than normal, maybe a little faster than we were used to experiencing because of the law of accelerated returns. But I'm going to limb here and say in the next 90 days, something catastrophically bad is going to happen with AI, and they're going to haul Sam Altman's butt in front of Congress and try to figure that out, because the minute there's an HTTP request possible, something stupid is going to happen. Stock market manipulation, war gets started, bomb goes off, terrorists, something they'll attribute to AI. I think that's going to happen. But my dystopian future isn't dystopian, it's just disturbing. The West Coast, Google, Meta, Amazon, eBay, name your big tech company, Salesforce, they play a different game than the rest of us play. You've got data scientists making $1.5 million a year that know more about how to manipulate data than anybody, any 100,000 people you'll talk to. These are elite mathematicians with deep understanding of set theory, deep understanding of linear algebra and array math, deep understanding of how to train and build the future that they want to live in. Whether rightly or wrongly, this group of people are playing a different game, a very different game than the rest of us. And as productivity is the key driver of success, what I can posit and hope against, but don't know if I'm wrong, is that we're going to have an AI elite, not necessarily the open AIs of the world or the Midjourneys of the world or people who are building the models, people who understand intrinsically how to use those models for their own gain. And if you think there's wealth inequality now,
oh yeah,
AI inequality is going to drive wealth inequality that is unprecedented in the history of humanity, except maybe when there were Chinese dynasties or there were pharaohs in Egypt or whatever, when you had literally you enslaved a country and they're building you pyramids. Okay, I guess they have a lot of wealth by comparison to, let's say, the people building the pyramids. But in modern history, when we think about what wealth is, knowledge is power. And those who get a handle on this quick, the way that the West Coast got a handle on good old-fashioned data collection, that's the most likely future. A handful of people are going to, like Bloomberg,
the trillionaire set.
Yeah, you're going to see the first trillionaires.
Yeah.
And I don't know what that does to the world, guys. I'm becoming more enlightened about the idea of universal basic income. I'm becoming more enlightened about.
But UBI bakes in that inequality. That's part of the problem.
I know.
Right? It solves the problem of you can't get work, and so you can't get paid.
Once again, it's a debate, Brett. I'm not an advocate one way or the other.
No, I'm with you. Absolutely.
Socratic debate about what you do.
Right.
What 4 billion people do not have access to the body of knowledge of mankind and the calculation speed with which I can do something. There's not like they can go to school and figure out how they're going to, you're not going to equal opportunity act or some kind. You're not going to legislate that equality because it's so far ahead of any policy that any policymaker could ever conceive of. From a time perspective, it'll take them a decade to catch up. In a decade, we will have something like AGI or near AGI in the hands of a very few who are so powerful because of it.
Yeah,
that it's not, and that's the future that keeps me up. And by the way, it excites me in ways I've never been excited. To come full circle, it also scares me in ways I've never been scared. And I think, to me, that's what makes this so exciting. We started this we have some courses at courses.shellypalmer.com with this thing called Med Academy. And the first one we did was crypto and NFTs because I have a best-selling book on blockchain. And then the next thing we did was metaverse and Web3, which was kind of, cool. And the definition for us in the metaverse is this ability for users and creators to share in the value they create and how you might, create business models and so the technology that might use that. Well, last week we debuted generative AI for executives at courses.shellypalmer.com. 100,000 people signed up in 10 days. You're wondering if people are interested in this?
Wow.
They're interested in this.
That's cool.
And so it's the name of the course. It's not that Shelly Palmer wrote it. It's not that. Forget all that. It's like my blockchain book was a bestseller, not because I'm a genius author, it's because I happened to put it out in the height of the blockchain craze. This got everybody's attention because, to your point, Rob, everyone is terrified. And by the way, it's justified to be terrified right now. Like, if you're not scared, you literally have not thought this through.
Yeah. Now, my issue with all of this, and I agree 100% with what you've said. My issue is that the only way to sort of control outcomes in some respect is to say, what are the constraints we want to put on AI, and that requires sort of ethical programming or ethical regulations, and that requires us reaching consensus on ethics, which I don't even know how we would do that.
How exactly?
Right.
When we talk about alignment with AI, that's about alignment with values, the human values. We can't get alignment on values in.
We
one
can't agree
country.
on abortion in the United States, right? It's like, yeah. So how are you going to codify ethics around this stuff?
Okay, let's think about it this way. So there's individuals listening, but there's also
we're over
groups.
Time too, so I'm conscious of Shelley's time. But
all right. There's individuals listening. There's groups of people. People are connected to groups, and then there's like kind of society at large and the world at large. And when we talk about these trends, we tend to sort of trombone between the individual experience, which I've been referring to, and then you go to kind of societal impact, which is large but incomprehensible, and there's not much we can do about it. Shelly, what would you recommend to people who are listening that they should do right now, like this month? What actions should they take to begin to prepare themselves for this inevitable transformation that's going to touch everybody's lives?
There are 3 levels that you can interact. First, you can wait for Microsoft to incorporate all of these tools into Microsoft Office and just be a better user of Microsoft Office, and that will get you to your retirement 20-year pin. They ain't going to do much else for you, but it'll get you out of you'll be an AI user.
And that's 1.2 billion users of Microsoft.
Yeah, no, it's a lot of people.
Yeah.
If you're a little more aggressive, then there is an unimaginable amount of information available online, but go get a chat GPT account, and on their Discord server, there is a prompt library, and just read the prompt library and understand how to add prompts to chat GPT. And then Midjourney is going to have a website for version 6, but right now you need a Discord account. You go to the Discord server, you go and you look at the prompts in their newbie channels and their general channels, and they'll teach you how to do it and make some images and just feel the power of this and let your mind be open to what could be. There's a thing called Futurepedia, which is a giant database of everything. Like Rob said earlier, 1,000 apps came out in March. We do a newsletter at shellypalmer.com every day. You're welcome to that. We do have our courses.shellypalmer.com. That we do have a generative AI course that is a really good, solid overview written in understandable words. But I would implore you in the middle zone to get deep into just the use cases, and I would approach it with an actual job in mind. It's something that you're passionate about as a side hustle. I wouldn't just do it to do it. Like, okay, I've got the Girl Scout meeting on Thursday. Let me make a flyer for the meeting, or I've got the PTA, or I'm baking cookies as do it as a project so that it has meaning to you and that you understand how it solved problems for you. Because otherwise it's just like going to school and learning something that's irrelevant. And the third approach to this is to start to get deep into what this is and decide what part of the problem you want to solve. And what I mean by that, as Brett made very clear, and Rob just made very clear, whose worldview would you want to impose? Well, we come from a society 50 years ago where there was the golden rule and an invariant sense of right and wrong. And we have devolved, and I'll say that with pure sincerity, into a society where there are just winners and losers, and the morality doesn't seem to matter. Mm-hmm. You have to decide which you are. Are you someone who has an invariant sense of right and wrong? And I'm not talking about divine inspiration, just the do unto others as you'd have them do unto you kind of golden rule thing. Does this feel right? Does this feel wrong? I got a family, the people I love, trying to protect, food on the table, want everyone to be safe. The most basic of basic Maslow's hierarchy of needs as the basis for our morality, and decide where you sit there, and then make some determinations about how you can help. And the only way you can help is the following. You can become educated so that you are speaking from a place of knowledge, not hearsay, not somebody's YouTube video, not Rob and Brett's podcast with listening to Shelly Palmer talk nonsense. Get your own opinion about this. You deserve to have your own opinion about it. It's got to come from a place of your learned, lived experience. That's thing one. And then two, you cannot affect change from the outside. You can't go on Twitter and affect change, or Facebook. A like ain't going to do it. You get on the phone with your elected official, you get down to their office, you find a staffer, you corner them and say, I know what this is. I understand it. Do you? And if they don't give you a satisfactory answer, start to organize in your community and change the leadership. There is a time before AI and there is a time after AI. We are now in the time after AI, and it is coming at a speed that will absolutely not make sense to you. And you're going to find yourself on the wrong end of that gun if you don't get involved. So you have three ways to do it. Learn to use it as part of the tools that you use every day, and then it'll impress you. Go a little deeper or go real deep. Those are your three choices. Ignoring it, not on the decision tree.
Fantastic. Wow. Shelly Palmer, thank you so much for the gift of your time. It has been a tremendous pleasure to hear you, to listen to you, to engage, to debate with you, and so on. And for the folks who are listening, Shelly is described in many ways as a technologist, as an author, as an expert, as a TV pundit, all those things. It's all true. There is much that you can gain by going to Shelly's website, shellypalmer.com. There's a tremendous amount of information there because at the core, apart from all those wonderful things, he shares a passion for educating people. He shares a passion for wanting to disseminate information and get people educated and get them informed. And you can get all that on the Shelly Palmer website. Please check it out. His courses are great. So I know this. I know about the cryptocurrency course, which we didn't even get to talk about because that's also a booming field. I'm so sorry. We'll have to have you back on the show. Thank you so very much. We went super long, but man, was it great. Thanks for sharing your wisdom with us today. Great to see you.
Always good to see you, Shelly.
Shout out to the folks who have been helping make the show, and that is the whole team at Provoke Media, Kevin Hirshhorn, our producer, Elizabeth Severance, and the whole crew at Provoke. We want to thank our sponsor and also my co-host, Brett King, who makes this show possible with his expertise. And if you like the show, please do us a favor, give us a 5-star review, share it with a friend. That has been working. Show's booming right now. So we're very, very happy about the progress we're making. And we appreciate everybody who's listening and all the work you're doing to help us get the word out about this program. So thank you all very much for that. And we will see you, Brett,
in the future.
Well, that's it for the Futurists this week. If you like the show, we sure hope you did. Please subscribe and share it with the people in your community. And don't forget to leave us a 5-star review. That really helps other people find the show. And you can ping us anytime on Instagram and Twitter at Futurist Podcast for the folks that you'd like to see on the show or the questions that you'd like us to ask. Thanks for joining. And as always, we'll see you in the future.